It's 100% in America's interest to create a Puerto Rico-like place in the land of Israel that would provide them a military base.
Those whom you allow to remain shall be thorns in your eyes and thorns in your sides, and they shall harass you in the land in which you live. They're not allowed to leave because a lot of these jihadist countries who don't care about them at all and hate them are using them as a pawn to perpetuate the 1948 war that they've never gotten over.
I think that sovereignty in Judea and Samaria has never been closer. Meaning, I don't think that we need peace with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia needs Israel and America much more than we need Saudi Arabia.
I believe in God. It doesn't say that I will get everything that I want, and it doesn't say that I will be happy all the time. But it's promised me just one thing, that behind everything that happened, there is purpose.
That is what is called faith.
Welcome to the Israel Guys and the Land of Israel Network, where we believe that in a world of anti-Israel propaganda and Jew hatred, you should have a direct connection to the land and people of Israel. Guys, so much happening in the news this week. I'm here with Joshua Waller and Rabbi Aryeh Abramowitz and Jeremy Gimpel. So good to have all of us here to talk about earth-shattering news, right? And it seems like the headlines just continue on and on. We're talking about Bibi Netanyahu, Israel's prime minister, being the first foreign leader to be invited to the White House since Trump was inaugurated. I also read, interestingly, that Bibi has stayed at the Blair House, the official guest residence for the White House, more times than any other foreign leader in his terms as prime minister and in government capacities in Israel. And groundbreaking that happens, was it yesterday morning or the night before, I believe? President Trump announces that the U.S. is going to take over the Gaza Strip, which we will dive into. What in the world does that mean? I also read, because everybody's talking Saudi Arabia, what's going to happen with Saudi Arabia? They've already rejected the plan. And a reporter asked Trump in that same press conference, do you support Israeli sovereignty in Judea and Samaria? And Trump responded saying there will be an official U.S. administration position within the next month. So all fascinating stuff. We're going to get into all of that. First, couple quick announcements, guys. Make sure you subscribe wherever you're listening or watching. So happy to have you here. Make sure to check out all the various platforms. And the Israel Summit 2025, where all four of us are going to be at and speaking, is June 9th through 11th this year, Dallas, Texas. You don't want to miss it. There'll be a direct link in the description below. And the exciting part is that Ambassador David Friedman, former U.S. Ambassador David Friedman, under Trump's first term in office, is going to be one of the keynote speakers. So could not be more excited about that.
Can I just tell you one of the most fascinating and impressive things about Ambassador David Friedman that people don't know? You heard it here first. He came out to the farm and he was sitting with us at the table. We were having lunch, and his son knows the entire Torah by heart.
You're kidding.
By heart.
It's not just by heart. You can say Leviticus chapter 28, verse 19, and he'll just close his eyes for a little bit and then spit out the exact verse, chapter, and wow. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, Ambassador Friedman, it was fun to talk to you. Anyways, it was like.
So his son was there. You met him.
Yeah, yeah. He brought his family to the farm.
That's awesome.
And by the way, that says something also about the ambassador himself. You know, how he raises his family and the values that he has, you see very often reflected in the children as the values of the parents. And I think he has been a demonstration of that godliness as a blessing for America and for Israel.
I one time asked him, because his name is David Melech Friedman, so it's like David the King. So I asked him, what
his middle name is Melech?
Yeah.
We're learning all these new things about Ambassador
So one time
Friedman.
I asked his brother, because I was at a meeting and his brother was there. I was like, how do you feel about your parents naming your younger brother, like David King, like King David? And he said, oh, it wasn't that bad. It was a family name or something. And it wasn't so yeah.
I thought he was going to say it's hard to be Benjamin Messiah Friedman.
Right.
Because in Israel, Messiah is actually a name. I had a plumber named Mashiach.
Wow.
Right.
Like Mashiach is coming to my home to fix my clogged sink.
And I mean, beside all those impressive accomplishments, he also happens to be like the sole reason that the U.S. Embassy was moved to Jerusalem and Jerusalem was recognized by Trump as the capital. But we'll I don't have time to get into all of that. But you guys should register right now for the Israel Summit. Link in the description below. Would love to see and meet all of you guys there. So before we dive into the details, the U.S., the United States of America, taking over the Gaza Strip. I want to just do lightning round, like 5 words. Josh, good or bad?
If I were to boil it down into good or bad, the fact is, the question is it going to be American territory or Israel? That's my thought. And if it's Israel, I'm really excited. If it's America, I'm kind of like, I don't know. Like, what is this? I don't feel like America should own territory on the Gaza Strip. If they can help, it's great. That's my big.
Good for Israel. Good for the world.
From the place of the ultimate truth, everything that happens is good and is for the good. Now, it depends really how this thing plays out. I feel conflicted because on the one hand, I really believe Trump wants the best thing for Israel, for America, for humanity, for the world. And so he should be blessed for that. On the other hand, I grieve in my heart that Israel is not doing this ourselves, that we're not going in and declaring sovereignty and making a part of Israel. That being said, perhaps it will be like the times of Abraham, where Abraham purchased up the land of Israel. If America owns it, then there should be available for private purchase, and Jews could go and purchase Gaza as Abraham did and make it Jews. God has ways of doing things that we don't know, but I'm sorry, that's more than 5 words. Jeremy,
well, I'll tell you, there are 3 things that need to happen when we come into the land of Israel. And the first one is to rid the land of Amalek, to rid the land of evil. And all of a sudden now, relocating the Gazans is not just mainstream, it's what the president of America is saying needs to be done. So if we can remove the evil from the land of Israel, that is such a huge step forward that Israel honestly couldn't do on its own. Even if we passed the law, the Supreme Court, the woke, left-wing, progressive, liberal Supreme Court would have shut that bill down. And so when America says we're doing it, this is America, the Supreme Court has no authority anymore, and Israel disengaged from Gaza, leaving it sort of up in the air of who that land actually belongs to. America coming in and saying, all right, we're relocating the Gazans permanently is such a huge step in the right direction.
It was a cataclysmic tectonic shift. I mean, he took something that within Israeli society was outside the Overton window. You could not, even the most furthest right-wing politician could not come out and say, transfer the entire population.
There was an Israeli politician, Michael Ben-Ari, that was banned from running in the Knesset because he said that we have to relocate the Gazans.
Yeah, and then Trump comes in and is like, someone asks, what about him? Oh, what about them? Yeah.
Can we just call Trump like the ultimate rule breaker? So before, like, we need to get into all these details, but let's just watch the 30-second clip of Trump making this announcement.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area. Do a real job, do something different. Just can't go back. If you go back, it's going to end up the same way it has for 100 years.
So a lot to unpack there, and obviously a lot of questions, and some people speculating that the U.S. administration officials were scrambling to follow up with okay, here's what the president actually means. The White House press secretary came out and said, well, it's going to be a temporary relocation. You know, the president means this. We're not sending U.S. troops in. The U.S. is not going to fund this, et cetera, et cetera. But what are y'all's thoughts? The other question is, how much? Some people actually speculating Bibi was kind of surprised when this announcement came out. Like, what are y'all's thoughts? Was this a carefully calculated move? Is this something that Bibi and Trump came up with together? Is this just a classic, Trump just throw this out there and see how the world reacts?
Well, it's for sure that they've been talking about relocating on the other side. They've been talking about relocating Arabs from Gaza. And the Trump administrations, that's actually been an internal thing that they've been talking about for a while. So I don't think that's a new idea. It's new to everybody, but that's come out that wasn't such a new idea.
Well, Trump would never do this without Israel's approval. It's not like he's doing this rogue and shocking Bibi. There were conversations that had to have happened before that announcement happened. That wasn't like shocking Bibi when he's actually in the press.
I'm not sure about that. I can imagine him just thinking of it as he's answering the question.
I don't think so.
Can I also say something? there's something good going on when you see Bibi beaming at the White House. Absolutely.
Well, I mean, just
beaming.
contrast it to Obama, who like snuck Bibi in through the back door by the big garbage disposal unit. And now Trump is the first guest coming into the White House and being treated as the ally and friend that, there's such a sharp contrast there, regardless of the outcome of this. It's a restoration that I think Americans are celebrating. Israel is celebrating. I think that there's really a blessing that's happening, because regardless of how I feel about this Gaza thing, I feel that Trump's heart is in the right place. He wants something good. And I think that nations are also judged on a macro level. Like it or not, whether it's fair or not, it is fair in the eyes of God. And a leader that is democratically elected is a reflection of the nation on some level. And for so long, I felt like America did not have blessing upon it. It was not heading down a path of virtue and godliness and biblical truth at all. And now Trump has been brought in, and he's surrounded himself by people who are biblical, God-fearing people.
To
and
me,
so that's a tremendous
that
blessing.
was the greatest thing that's happened. Trump is actually peeling back the layers of lies, and the truth for the first time is really being exposed. The truth is being revealed. Gazans have no right to that land. They're not Gazans as if they're indigenous to Gaza. Everyone says 2/3 of them are refugees. They have no claim in any right to that land. The Palestinian people is a fiction that was created just to destroy Israel, because if there's a Palestinian people, then a Palestinian people obviously needs a Palestine, and Arabs are from Arabia, not Judea and not Gaza. And so now it's saying, yes, we need to relocate them because there's no claim there. And the truth now, because evil uses delusions and illusions to mask the truth. And now he's just peeling that away, exposing the truth that this land belongs to Israel, and working together with Israel, coming out with a joint statement with the Prime Minister of Israel next to him, saying we're going to rebuild Gaza from a base of terrorism and destruction to a base of liberty, unity, and prosperity. Like,
Well, let me
what
just
a
ask you-
beautiful idea.
Let me ask you a question. If you guys have this little voice in the back of your head, a little skeptical voice, then maybe this is a negotiating technique. Maybe this is, and by the way, I don't think any of this is necessarily premeditated. I think he's such an instinctive person that it's just coming out. But he was just talking about the Gulf of America. It's not the Gulf of Mexico anymore. It's the Gulf of America. And we're going to put 25% tariffs on Mexico. And then all of a sudden, Mexico's like, well, back it up. How about this? We'll give you 10,000 of our soldiers to guard from Mexican infiltration with fentanyl into America. And Trump is getting all these things he wants. He backed off the tariffs, not renaming it the Gulf of America. He just throws things out there and then ends up getting real concessions from people who are afraid of his errata. Maybe that's part of what this is. He's throwing such a thing out there, but it's not really an intention for him to go and build the Riviera and make it.
It's 100% in America's interest to create a Puerto Rico-like place in the land of Israel. That would provide them a military base that doesn't need to be
Israel's
with
already that
aircraft
military
carriers,
base.
but now it would be America's military base. There's pictures coming out in Egypt where they've brought weapons, vehicles, tanks lining up on Egypt's
That was
border.
concerning.
All of a sudden now there's going to be an American military presence in a place that would theoretically be America. That will bring a new stability to the region and to the area.
I like that for right now. What happens if that was a military base under our last administration and that wasn't so pro-Israel? That's when it gets concerning to me, thinking long term. What happens when Trump's no longer the president and say we get a administration that's not so pro-Israel? That's the little thing behind the scenes to me that's concerning. If it's not built on a sovereign Israel basis, then I could foresee problems. Not now, because we got to support it. Like, Trump loves Israel, he supports Israel. My big thought is when Trump in that video, he says that we're going to rebuild this for the locals. Basically, we're going to rebuild. Who's he talking about? There's a lot of ambiguity. There's not a lot of clarity, not clear, and he's doing that from purpose. I'm sure he's leaving a lot of room here to develop this.
I listened to this whole piece
there.
of the press conference. It was very ambiguous. It wasn't clear when he was saying settle them back in. Is he talking about settling in the Hamas jihadist Gazans? Or is he not talking about them? Does he understand that the overwhelmingly vast majority of these Gazan civilians are actually terrorist Hamas supporters?
Well,
Does he understand that?
From what I understand, he does know that now because I believe he watched that 45-minute documentary that was put together on the atrocities.
Has he watched it yet?
He did watch it before that meeting with Netanyahu. That was, in my mind, a game-changing reality when he was able to just see evil for what evil is. And that's why when he says he wants to remove the Gazans, he's not saying temporarily, meaning they're backtracking now the State Department, but he wants to remove them from the land. And in my mind, that is such a giant step forward. Yes, I understand that in 4 years from now, if a new administration arises, but right now we have a chance to move the jihadist evil from the land and then establish a place of freedom and liberty. Then the freedom and liberty will decide where they align, meaning that would be a true part of the Abraham Accords.
We're talking about two people right now. We're talking about the Gazans, Israel, and actually if we could add America to this thing, but there's also other players. Saudi Arabia. Is there a thought that the Gulf states are going to be involved with this?
When you say be involved, are you talking about receiving the Gazans?
Well, because I just look at Trump as the deal maker. He's really, and they're also saying they don't like this plan. What have you guys thought about that?
They're already backing down. Saudi Arabia has already said, oh, the thing that we were saying under Biden and the Biden administration that we're not going to make a deal with Israel unless there is a Palestinian state. They're like, no, not necessarily. Maybe a path forwards, a lot of really good talk about a Palestinian state, meaning that when there is no daylight between America and Israel, it's a blessing for Israel, it's a blessing for America, and the world sees this as such a powerful united bloc that all of a sudden Saudi Arabia is like, there's strength there and we can rely on this and it's solid. We don't need to play this game as if we care at all about the Palestinians.
Well, I think Saudi Arabia would play a big role in investing in building up this Riviera. I mean, what a dream. Well, for me, what it did was it gave me hope. There was a time where I was looking around and I said, the hostages are being released. There's a sort of a ceasefire thing. Just like, is this it? We're just going to end now? And we're like in the middle. What are we doing with these Gazans and the Hamas? And now there's a way forward. That is a huge step for everyone. It's like, wow, there's a new conversation that's happening now about relocating the Gazans. They lost their right to self-governance. And in that way, Iran really lost the war.
I'll just tell you how my heart is a little bit torn. I'm a little bit heartbroken, and maybe I'm a purist or an idealist to such an extreme degree that it's even a flaw. I don't know. But when I heard what Trump said, get them out, then I thought of the verse in the book of Numbers. But if you do not possess the inhabitants of the land, those whom you allow to remain shall be thorns in your eyes and thorns in your sides, and they shall harass you in the land in which you live. This is a clear biblical directive. Why is the Bible not being implemented by the nation of the Bible, by the people of the Bible, who are supposed to be a beacon of light and living the Torah for a living manifestation of the Torah for the entire world? And then America is coming in and implementing this verse, or even suggesting it, even putting it out there.
To me, it just seems like a dose of humility for Israel, that God's plan will unfold, and it'll take an American president to do it.
If it will not be through you, Israel, then
it will
maybe
happen some way or another, meaning to me, it's very clear that God saved Trump's life. That bullet came a millisecond right near, and for just a time like this. I mean, Proverbs chapter 21 says, the king's heart is in the hand of God. Like the rivers of water, he turns it wherever he wants. That is what's happening now, meaning God is taking control and shifting history in the most unexpected way possible. That's exciting.
And I feel like with Trump, is a demonstration of that more than I've ever seen in another leader, because you can almost see the global world-changing policies coming out from a shift in his eye and a thought fleeting through his head. Right? It says, Rabot machshavot belev ish v'atzat Hashem hitakum. There will be many thoughts in the heart of man, but God's will is what will arise. But I actually heard a different teaching about that. Many will be thoughts in the heart of man, but God's will, he will decide which of those thoughts in the heart of man he will raise up. And so what comes out of Trump's mouth, quite literally, as Jeremy said, is what God is willing to play out in the world right now. And that's why he's such a perfect vessel, because he's true to allow his instinct to come up, where a lot of people don't have that sort of unbelievable confidence in their intuition that would change massively the entire globe.
Right.
Well, what that video did, I think, to Donald Trump was it shifted his perspective to realize that the Hamas are the Gazans and the Gazans are Hamas. In that video, there's no distinction between the Hamas terrorists with the green ribbon and the simple people of Gaza. They were all participating. They were all celebrating. They were all beating the hostages. And to see evil manifest, it was like October 7th was this historic turning point. And as the Jewish people left Egypt, we were like the pride of the world. God was revealed. We took down the mightiest empire. And then evil came, Amalek, and attacked Israel. And then it sort of like threw some cold water, saying like, is God really that powerful? Look, we're able to attack this chosen people. And Hamas, for the first time, broadcast the atrocities of October 7th, saying, oh, the Jewish people in the land of Israel, let's see what they're really worth. Let's broadcast this humiliation. And it was that humiliation, that broadcasting, that's now causing their downfall. And so it was this historic turning point that without October 7th, I don't know if Trump would have been elected. Everyone sort of recognized like, whoa, that may come into my borders. Right. We have to wake up.
Right. I think you're going to unpack this on like a lot of different levels. If we just start with the base level, this is how I see it. I see Trump has common sense, right? He's doing what you're talking about. He watched the October 7th footage. He sees the atrocities of Hamas. And then he's looking at pictures of Gaza and he's seeing, we've all been to Gaza. We've seen the rubble ourselves. Gaza is a trash heap. There is no Gaza to speak of. They allowed the Gazans back into the north of Gaza. What did they do? They turned around and went back south because there's nothing. There's absolutely nothing. So Trump's looking at this on a very foundational level going, we have to start over. And he also has realized that any kind of plan that allows Gaza to rebuild is just going to end up with the same thing. October 7th again, oppression for the Gaza people. So he's saying, if we're going to turn the page in history, there has to be something different.
And also Gazans are coming out in droves and saying, you don't need to open the border. We're out.
Right. Oh, that was my next point.
When has it ever been that during a conflict like this, they're being held imprisoned there? They're not allowed to leave because a lot of these jihadist countries who don't care about them at all and hate them are using them as a pawn to perpetuate the 1948 war that they've never gotten over.
The people that are funding them and sending them supplies like all the time coming from Egypt, supplies are literally being flown in. They're not going to allow them out. It's really a ridiculous thing.
And that's happening here in Judea and Samaria because here they actually have the option to leave and they can easily get visas to a lot of different countries. If that were to be open, which Itamar Ben-Gvir's introduced legislation in the Knesset right now to give the Gazans a voluntary option to leave and where Israel would actually even give them financial compensation for it. If that were to happen, we all know they would leave in droves, just like you're saying, because they do not want to live there.
It would be impossible for mere words to do justice in describing the Land of Israel Fellowship because, yes, we learn inspiring and uplifting insights into the Torah, into the Bible, together. Torah, as Isaiah said, that could only come forth from Zion. But it's so much more than that. It's a community of lovers of Israel from many nations, from every corner of the world. Jews, Christians, it doesn't matter. We're more than a community. We've become a family. This is an invitation. Give it a try. Come visit us at thelandofisrael.com. You guys have done a piece about this before. If you drive through Judea and Samaria and you see these massive mansions and Humvees and Range Rovers, and they're able to build and live quite nicely here. Right. But
I think that's what
they just keep it as their vacation homes.
Yeah, vacation homes.
Honestly, that's not like a.
They've taken massive advantage and they've made the world think the situation here is something that it's not. It's been probably one of the biggest scandals of our historic time. The scandal of the Arab world demonizing the Jewish people, telling a story, revamping the history, rewriting the history. I mean, that's what we've all seen here. And what's happening is it's falling. That whole facade that was built since 1964 of a Palestinian people, things you mentioned earlier, Jeremy, like this, the facade is now crumbling, and now the truth is coming to the top with people like Trump and these different leaders, Bibi, these leaders that are recognizing the truth for once and not going along with this horrible remake of history that's been written since 1964. That's how we get to. I see the reason why I'm optimistic about this Trump plan I'm optimistic about the next 4 weeks when we hear something about Judea and Samaria, because I believe that they're addressing the core issue. They're not saying to state like the other administrations have historically gone on. They are not believing the narrative
I'm
that
holding
is
my breath
false.
though, on that.
I'm also holding my breath, but I'm optimistic about it because I believe they understand that the narrative was incorrect. They understand that the Arab narrative for the last since 1964 was not rooted in truth. It was propaganda, and it was all written in order to delegitimize and demonize the Jewish state and its origins here. So once that can be removed, then I think we've got something to talk about. And I think that's where we're going to see blessing. And we're also going to see some really common sense moves starting to happen, like get terrorists out of Israel. Now, I don't understand why terrorists need to belong anywhere, but that's I don't know what
here's another
how that'll
level
be dealt
to
with.
This plan as well that I just want to bring up. So the White House press secretary said that Trump's plan is all about lasting peace for the entire region. She talked about how President Trump is an outside the box thinker and a visionary leader that solves problems that many others, especially that claim are unsolvable. So she's talking about he has common sense. He's an out of box thinker. Nobody else has put forward anything remotely feasible for Gaza, right? But she also uses the opportunity to clarify where Trump's his plan is temporarily relocate the Gazans. So I saw a comment from someone that said, and this makes a lot of sense, right? How many years is it going to take to rebuild Gaza, even if the U.S. comes in and like spearheads this project? We're talking 10 years, 20 years, right? You take the 1.8 or however many Gazans there are, they temporarily relocate.
I think he said permanent.
Well, he said permanent, but then his staff came back and said, no, he meant temporary, right? It's classic Trump, right? But my question is, either way, how many Gazans are going to come back in 10 years, even if they have the opportunity to come back?
Well, likely there'll be infrastructure in place that they'll actually have to get a visa to come back. I mean, I hope so.
Right, but even if they have the opportunity, I don't think they're coming back. They leave, and provided that they're not stuck in a refugee camp somewhere and they actually could move to another country.
Well, nobody cares
if
it's not a refugee camp in Israel. Nobody
even if they have the
less.
opportunity, I don't think they would take it.
I think the big challenge in this whole thing is which country would possibly take them. There's not one Arab country that is even entertaining the idea. We did see that picture of the cannibals saying, yes, please send them to us, 10 a week. We prefer them chubby, but there's no country that's actually coming and saying, because they know what an erratic jihadist destabilizing force these people are. And so I don't see how that's actually going to really play out.
Well, there are so many countries, and Colombia was against Trump. Mexico was against Trump, and Trump has a way. And I feel like he's such a businessman. He's keeping his cards close to his chest. He's leaving things unclear. He's leaving things ambiguous. Is it permanent? Is it temporary? Is it 20 years? Is it 10 years? Once they're gone, are they going to come back? Because a good businessman keeps his cards close to his chest. He doesn't want to reveal everything at the same time. But what has happened is terrorists are going to be relocated. That is a new paradigm shift, and that paradigm shift needs to happen in Judea and Samaria, needs to happen in Jerusalem. And instead of releasing terrorists into the streets, which is the direction we were going with this hostage deal, we're actually changing the narrative, saying if you are a jihadist, you will be removed from the land. That is the biblical imperative.
But what I don't like about this, and I could be wrong here, is it doesn't feel like the right thing for Israel to do is to export this toxic genocidal evil to any other country, to any other people. We really need to crush it. And I think one of the ways that you actually crush the ideology is not by getting into their textbooks, but by uprooting it from its very core, from the deepest roots. And what does that mean? For Israel to come in as true, overwhelming victors, declare sovereignty, have an iron fist against terrorists, Hamas terrorists, execute them as they need to be executed. Can I say that? Does that need to say execute Hamas terrorists is the fact that I even need to ask if that can be said. It's so obviously the right thing that needs to be done. And when you when you negate the foundations of their jihadist ideology, that is, think about it, after 1967, when we overwhelmingly obliterated against all odds, they don't even study that in West Point because they study wars and not miracles. Israel, when you could walk through, a Jew could walk through Ramallah, Jenin, Tulkarem, walk through without any fear because they were like, the overwhelming strength and victory of the God of Israel over us. It's only when we started coming in and violating the covenant and giving them land and that things got weak. I think we need to come in and really, as the nation of Israel, with strength do this. And I'm not confident the long-term blessing is going to come from Gaza becoming an American colony.
Well, let's just look at the trajectory, because to uproot an ideology, it has to be proven wrong. And Iran waged a war against Israel, funded the Hamas, organized Hezbollah, and today Gaza is in ruins. The Hamas is practically destroyed. Hezbollah is devastated. Iran's ally Assad has been toppled. Iran's air defense systems have been destroyed, leaving them totally vulnerable. And Arab self-rule in Gaza is lost right now. It's definitely not going back to the Hamas. It's definitely not going to the Palestinian Authority or some other terrorist organization. And now we've paved the way for relocating terrorists. Like, that is the conversation that we're having now, that Michael Ben-Ari, the politician, was banned for running in Israel's Knesset for saying relocate the terrorists. And now that is the mainstream. That is a trajectory, and we're headed in the right direction.
Here's a big problem I see. I think it's a great trajectory, and I think it's awesome. But just to throw out another issue, if you don't fight your enemy and destroy your enemy, if you just relocate him, there is problematic sense of that. And kind of what you're saying, Ari, is because what we've seen is that as long as there's something intact for Israel in Israel, if Judea and Samaria, for instance, is not completely won over as well, then we also have these terror networks that are going to be run from Iran, from Jordan and Egypt and Turkey. I mean, that's what we have going on right now. These prisoners that have been sent out from here, even though they've been banned from Israel, say, which is great, that the problem's no longer here, but those tentacles still are attached. And those leaders, those ones that had life sentences in Israel, are now able to funnel all of that hatred and evil through and encourage attacks here. And we've seen that happen actually quite recently.
Yesterday, here in Samaria, someone that you know from here in Har Bracha, there was a terrorist attack on an army base, and I wouldn't be surprised if that weapon that he used was sent directly from Iran. Iran is sending weapons into Judea and Samaria.
But even more than that, they're training and teaching and coordinating from abroad. That's the big issue that I foresee, is that it needs to be added to this. How do we make sure that it's completely dismantled, not just moved to an exterior point? Because if they can still target our friends and family that live here in Israel, that's a big problem I still have, which means that it has to be not just removed, it has to be finished. And I don't know how that works when you're removing these, say if you're just moving all of the Gazans out, that's not destroying Hamas.
Well, I think what both of you guys are saying here is Israel should be strong, Israel should be sovereign, and they should obliterate evil. The terrorism and the evil should be obliterated. And that's something that unfortunately, 3 weeks ago, we saw Israel compromised on in order to get hostages back. And in Israel, they were strong for 15 months. And then all of a sudden, I think Bibi told Fox News that Hamas is something like 70 or 80% destroyed, their capacity and their firepower. But unfortunately, they've stopped. Now Israel said, no, we're committed to finishing Hamas, but they've stopped the war at this point. So the question is, will they continue to be strong? And I think that's something everybody should agree on. Strong Israel, sovereign Israel, evil and terrorism should be obliterated from the land. Now, people ask me, I'm sure they ask you, is there a future for Arabs in Israel, in Judea and Samaria, in Gaza? Is there a future for them? Could they live in peace with Israel? My response, and you guys can tell me what you think, but my response has always been, there's a future for anyone in Israel and with the Jewish people if they believe in the God of Abraham and if they embrace a covenant that God made with the Jewish people and with Israel. To me, it doesn't matter who you are. You're Arab, Muslim, Christian, whoever you are, you have to stand with the God of Abraham and with the covenant that he made. And that there's a future for anyone with the Jewish people.
Can I clarify one more thing on that point,
Israel, if you believe in those things? I
think you'll all agree with this as well, but I think it helps with the clarity is that maybe not this and that, but it literally from a biblical perspective, which all of us share, and hopefully the new administration also shares a biblical perspective on this issue, is literally you have Israel, and then you don't, in a biblical perspective, you don't have America's not really mentioned in the Bible. China's not mentioned in the Bible. Russia, I mean, maybe prophetically or whatever, but by name, right? You have Israel, and then you have everyone else. So meaning, this is the land of Israel and the Jewish people, and then those on the outside must be guests and participate how Israel decides. And that's kind of what we boil it down.
And that's the
people
model
can
that
be
you
a part
see all
of.
throughout the Bible. I mean, Ruth attached herself to Israel. The Torah talks about the foreigner who joined themselves to Hashem. Right?
Israel is not a racist state. It's a welcoming state. It's a house of prayer for all nations from a biblical view. So
just as Moses was accused by Korach of being mitnaseh, of being arrogant, and the Bible tells us he was the most humble, we're always accused of that which is opposite. I don't think there is a less racist state in the world than Israel, in the entire world. And so, for me, when to answer your question, when we look at Ishmael, the father of the Arab world, in the end of his life, he reconciled with Isaac. We believe that those are archetypes, that is a blueprint for what's going to play out and what is already playing out. The Abraham Accords, we're heading there. So if you ask, is there a future for Arabs in Israel? Arabs, yes. Jihadists, no. It's that simple.
that's great.
Right.
I think that all of this boils down to truth. And truth is absolute. And there is no scientific proof that's absolute. There's just scientific experiments that eventually point in a certain direction. And there is one promise, one foundation, that without it, there is no truth. And that is the promise of the land of Israel to the people of Israel. If you are going to participate in that promise and reveal that truth, that is the truth of reality. And it's just a matter of time until reality reveals itself. And that is the truth that we just need to have patience and just hold on be'emunah, with faith that the truth will ultimately be revealed.
Jeremy and I, in our fellowship, we're connected with righteous of the nations, much like you guys, from all over the world. And these people have installed on their phone the Red Alert app, where the minute there's a missile shot into Israel, wakes them up in the middle of the night and they say Psalms. They tell me that they're struggling with pain and grief and anxiety over what's happening in Israel. And the Psalms tell us, King David tells us, Hazorim b'dim'ah barina yiktsoru. Those who sow with tears reap with joy. It doesn't need to be theological. People who love Israel and the Jewish people so much that their heart and their emotions are attached to it, they will be sharing they share in the merit of the redemption that is coming, and they're a part of it. They're a part, literally, of what is happening here, wherever they are physically in the world.
Yeah, it's a good point. Just to make it not so theological, meaning we are witnessing the promise to Abraham. It's like we are watching the Abraham Accords that is being fulfilled before our eyes under all of the names that's bringing this region together in a peace that includes the believers in America, that includes the righteous Muslims in the region. They're all coming under the banner of who? Abraham, who is the father of many nations. I mean, can we see the Bible come more to life than we're actually watching what's happening? Gaza is just the beginning. October 7th was the beginning of the end. And we are now at the final marching orders toward a new era. That's what it feels like to me.
Amazing. Any last thoughts about Trump's plan? I mean, we could probably go for 2 hours, but to me, the only other layer that's possible here is kind of what Josh, and I think Ari, you were talking about at the beginning, is this part of a negotiation or a master plan that doesn't actually involve, rebuilding Gaza? Is this something to do with Saudi Arabia or furthering the Abraham Accords? I don't know. What do you think?
Which I would think would also be positive, and kind of what you're saying, Jeremy.
I guess the problematic part too, just before you dive into, is this part of a plan that's going to force Israel into something that they shouldn't do, like a concession?
I foresee that the creating a 23rd Arab state is kind of being pushed out. Is that what you guys?
24th. Totally.
24th. How many Arab states? Yeah. Another Arab state. That idea is being. I think that's off the table. I don't see that. That's why the moving out, the deportation of these people is so uplifting, because this is the first time we're saying no to another state.
October
saying one
7th
state.
was the two-state solution. That was the consequence of that, allowing evil to manifest, to rule itself, to get guards. It just became a base of terror. And there's no question that's what would happen with any Arab state that's in the land of Israel. Now we're finally liberating the land from that. And that is the most important step, is actually removing the evil from the land.
So my big question, I guess, and the question we don't really have a lot of information on, is what that would look like. And I foresee it moving very much in that direction. I don't see a situation where it's just America and Israel building Gaza. I very much so feel like Trump is going to be pulling in the Gulf states in order to expand the Abraham Accords, with that as a big chunk of the deal.
Let me tell you something beautiful. When the Abraham Accords were signed, immediately, the first opportunity that I had, I took my family to Dubai.
Right.
I wanted to walk around with like a Star of David, walking around a Muslim country. I thought that I would never see that in my lifetime. And we were honored and celebrated for being Israelis that were there. And it was beautiful because in Dubai, there are Chinese people, Indian people. It looked like a little vision of like the entire world, like a little messianic era right there. And there was 0% crime. It was absolutely.
You didn't feel threatened?
Nothing. There's zero crime there. Imagine 0% crime.
Well, because you grew up in this area. I mean, you're from this area, and when you go, like, I automatically, when I'm in a strictly Arab country, I feel the oppression of it.
Of course.
And you're saying that was not there.
There was 0% crime. I never even heard of such an idea. I was able to sell my little girl across the street to go get some milk that we'd be able to have. I mean, it was like an unbelievable reality. Now, what will happen if this dream somehow manifests and the United Arab Emirates are involved and Saudi Arabia is involved and they're building up this Riviera? It will bring the world to celebrate the greatest weather in America, and they'll be able to see the truth. Meaning, what Hayovel does better than any other organization is it brings people to Judea, to Samaria, to see the truth of Israel. Because then evil can't manipulate. Because lies can be said, this is an apartheid state, this is a racist state. All of a sudden, when you see reality with your own eyes, and they're able to come and visit a rebuilt Gaza, then evil has to retreat because the truth will be revealed. The more people we can bring to the land of Israel to visit, to tour, to invest, to grow, the better.
I'll tell you, my concern is when you say it'll bring the world to realize, let's think about what happened the last time we were on a great trajectory with Saudi Arabia and the Abraham Accords, and they're expanding and they're expanding. What happened? Hamas saw this blessing and this progression towards what appeared to be a type of redemptive time, and they came in and attacked on October 7th. My concern, I don't want to say concern because I try not to be concerned about anything because it's all in God's hands, but is that Iran is seeing what's happening, the way the pieces are being moved, and they're like, this is the time to go for it. I think that we have a real danger here of being on the edge of real global world war happening. Now, maybe I have a tendency to think in that capacity, but I think it's a real danger that we're facing. And by the way, if that did happen because of what the Trump administration is doing, I would not blame them one bit. They're doing everything they can to steer the world away from that. It's the Biden administration that led us to the precipice of world war to begin with. So I wouldn't blame Trump, but I do think we need to keep a very close eye on Iran because they're going for the gold
forward. I mean, they're not slowing down from what we hear. They're moving forward at rapid pace.
With the nuclear, that's all. That's their final card. That's what they have.
Which has to also be mentioned here as we're looking at all of these things. Benjamin Netanyahu is also becoming of age, and that is one thing that he will be taking care of by all signs of it before he leaves office.
You say that with conviction.
I feel that way.
I think there's no choice exactly because of what you said, meaning it's not enough to take care of Gaza and it's not enough to take care of Judea and Samaria. The head of the snake is Iran. And if we leave Iran with nuclear capabilities, it's just a matter of time until that evil is unleashed.
The problem is the axis is growing. It's not just Iran anymore. Right?
Turkey, yeah.
Well, no,
Turkey,
it's even more.
Russia, China.
I'm saying that now we're talking about a global war. Now we're not talking about dealing with Iran anymore. And they know that.
And my concern is so many people are looking at Trump and like, they're so excited. They're so optimistic. They're like, this guy has it under control, something, or not under control, but great things are happening. And they're putting so much belief and faith in Trump that I have an instinctive aversion to that. Like, let's back down here for a second. Like, we could be headed in another direction also.
Well, he said that. We talked about it last week, but he literally said were on the verge. We still are on the
He's
verge.
like, you don't know how close we were.
We don't know how close you were. Like literally, we're that close.
Well, the biggest thing that we have to mention on this topic is during the same press conference when Trump had his explosive announcement about Gaza, a reporter from Israel, here from Arutz Sheva, asked him, do you support sovereignty in Judea and Samaria? Let's watch that clip.
President, you support Israeli sovereignty in Judea and Samaria, areas which many believe is the biblical homeland of the Jewish people.
Well, we're discussing that with many of your representatives. You're represented very well, and people do like the idea, but we haven't taken a position on it yet. But we will be we'll be making an announcement probably on that very specific topic over the next 4 weeks.
The fact that he said we'll be making an announcement in the next 4 weeks, like that's crazy. I mean, so what do you guys think? I mean, predictions here? The American position for decades has always been Palestinian state, two-state solution. Like that's the only position that a lot of Americans understand. Obviously, we've started seeing the shift in global thinking, but the world's not quite there yet. So I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think that how many times can you make the same mistake over and over again? Meaning it's been decades trying to shove this two-state idea down Israel's throat until it brought Israel to almost destruction. I mean, we were an existential threat. Had Iran attacked, Hezbollah tried to attack, Gaza attacked, had Egypt joined in, Israel could have been erased. It is time to put the two-state solution to rest. And I love the way that question was asked. Judea and Samaria, which is the biblical homeland of the Jewish people. Now, the people that are surrounding President Trump now, they really see the world through the eyes of the Bible, through the eyes of history, not through the eyes of like what happened since 1940s or 1930s. It's like going all the way back to Jewish history. And there is no people more indigenous to a land than the Jews in Judea. Jews have been living in Jerusalem longer than French people have been living in Paris. Jews have been living in Jerusalem longer than any Americans lived in America. Like it's
uninterrupted since temple times.
Exactly. And so that is the truth. And if we just align with reality, reality will unfold with blessing.
Many Christians feel alone in their support for Israel, especially in a world that tries to delegitimize the Jewish people's right to exist. But you don't have to stand alone. We could not be more excited to announce the second annual Israel Summit, a 3-day event in Dallas, Texas on June 9th through 11th to bring together thousands of like-minded pro-Israel advocates just like yourself. Guys, we want you to join us this June in Dallas, Texas for the Israel Summit, where you'll connect with passionate, like-minded individuals from all around the globe. Hear from world-class Israeli speakers, including Rabbis Jeremy Gimpel and Aryeh Bramowitz, Yishai Fleischer, Ambassador David Friedman, and so many more. Gain access to resources that will empower you to stand firm in your support of Israel. Be empowered with cutting-edge educational resources and tools to help you advocate better for Israel and the Jewish people. Together, we can fight back against the negativity and hatred. Let's unite our voices in standing with Israel and show the world that Israel's right to be sovereign in the entirety of their land is non-negotiable. Guys, join us in Dallas, Texas, June 9th through 11th, 2025. It's time to make a difference. It's time to stand with Israel. You want to get your tickets early and at an incredible 25% off discount. Don't wait though, because these prices won't last. Just click the link in the description below to join us at this year's Israel Summit.
Right, and I'll tell you, when you look at England, pre-World War II, Churchill was vilified. They were talking about hanging him from the light poles in England. And then what happened? They elected Chamberlain, who came in and peace in our times and making deals with Hitler. And what shifted England into the massive blitz, the stomach punch, and then the face being knocked out, nearly destroyed. They're like, oh, we need that guy that we were calling an extremist and crazy that we wanted to hang from the light poles. Please be our prime minister. I think Israel is coming around quicker than the rest of the world regarding Judea and Samaria, because I could tell you, living here, being on the deepest settlement in southeastern Judea, so much, there are people in Israel like, you're the problem. The Judea and Samaria, the settlements, you're the reason. And now they're like, thank you. We understand now that without you, all of Netanya Ranana, the Tel Aviv would be October 7th 1,000 times. I think the world will soon come to the understanding that Judea and Samaria is the tip of the spear in protecting every human being that doesn't want to live under the jihad.
There's one thing that I think is interesting on this topic of Judea and Samaria, and that is that I feel like the Trump administration, at least in the past, saw them Gaza and Judea and Samaria as something they wanted to connect. They saw them as the same issue, and so I don't know.
Well, the deal of the century actually called for a physical road between Judea and Gaza.
So their mindset is that the same people, same problems. And I wonder if it's being shifted. If it's not being shifted, I could foresee that it's being connected, that what will come in 4 weeks will be connected to what will come, also be defined more with Gaza, that it could actually all be declared as sovereign Jewish state. Now, that would be amazing. The only reason why that makes me think that is because the other day, Trump was sitting at his desk and he pulled out his pen. He was talking to a reporter. He pulled his pen out and he said, you know what? This is Israel. And he said, this is the rest of the Middle East is my whole desk. And he put his pen next to the table there and he's like, this is it, right? To me, what that was translated to me was Trump understands that Israel needs to be bigger. That's what I thought he was saying. I think he understood that Israel is America's strongest ally in the Middle East, the most stabilizing force in the Middle East, and it needs to grow, just like he would in like the American dream of being strong and holding on to your territory. And if there's an argument that Gaza and Judea and Samaria are a part of Israel historically, I can foresee that he would look at them as the same, and there would be Israeli sovereignty declared on both. I do feel like that could happen.
Well, that's another example of the absolute lie of the quote-unquote Palestinian people. The Arabs in Gaza have literally nothing to do with the Arabs in Judea and Samaria. They're different tribes.
Yep.
They're different backgrounds. There's different dialects
Even
in their
Judea and
conversation.
Samaria.
They're not a singular people. They are tribes that are nomadic from Arabia. And what did they do? They kind of wandered around the Middle East and squatted in different places. And they happen to be squatting on the Jewish people's ancestral homeland. And now the truth is coming out that if they want to live here with peace, with harmony with the Jewish people, they're welcome to stay here. But if they're not, then it's time to relocate them.
Mm-hmm. My big question is that going to be different? And if it is something different, because it seems like right now what we're getting is it's going to be two different things. Everybody's like, oh, is it going to be sovereignty in Judea and Samaria? Well, from the past, they've dealt with the two situations in the same kind of ideology. It would be very interesting for me to wonder if they differ, if they separate the two and it's Judea and Samaria over here and the Gaza over here. This is going to be our chopping block for creating peace with the Arab neighbors and expanding the Abraham Accords. Could do that. And also this Judea and Samaria thing is our negotiation between America and Israel. That's going to be, I could foresee them saying, okay, this is going to be a little bit different. This is not going to be a part of our negotiating and our deal making to expand Abraham Accords. This is going to be, we're going to expand Israel. And this is like the give to Bibi. I could foresee that. I really could foresee that.
Somebody read this quote. I think it summarizes this very well. So the local leaders in Judea and Samaria sent a letter to Netanyahu the day before his meeting in the White House. They said, quote, Israeli sovereignty is not a luxury, but a duty meant to prevent the establishment of an Arab terror state in the heart of the land, and it's part of the absolute victory. Complete Israeli sovereignty in Judea and Samaria is not only the realization of our natural right in our land, but it's also the only way to ensure that the horrors of October 7th will not repeat in Afula, Hadera, Kfar Saba, Modi'in, Jerusalem, and Beersheba. So it's going to be interesting, I think. Again, it's kind of one of those things we're going to hope for the best. Also, there's some really amazing players that are on Bibi's team that are part of this. Our good friend Caroline Glick is one of his closest advisors now. But predictions on what's going to happen in the next 4 weeks. Will Trump support the idea of sovereignty in Judea and Samaria, which personally I would say would be more earth-shattering than his plan for the U.S. to rebuild Gaza. Will Bibi Netanyahu support sovereignty as well, because he's historically flip-flopped on that issue? And obviously, the more important issue is for Israel to support sovereignty, not Trump, because like you were saying, Ari, the important thing is for Israel to be strong and sovereign. Obviously, we want the United States to support the idea as well, but Israel should be strong and do what they need to do. And obviously the big question is, will the idea of sovereignty be put forward, possibly in exchange for any idea of, normalization with Saudi Arabia, which has been for years now, has been like for some reason has been the like thing that everybody says is the most important. Obviously, giving up land in your very heartland is not more important than any kind of normalization with any other country.
I just foresee that the Israeli team that's on deck right now, the Israeli government team, including with Bibi, who is flip flop, but he's got a right wing team on his deck right now. I can foresee that the Israeli team would be, and I almost feel like the beam that we see, that beaming face that Bibi's carrying right now in Washington D.C. could be connected to Bibi's. It feels like Bibi has actually only leaned left because of pressure. He naturally wanted to be right, is my perception after reading his book and knowing more about him historically. I feel like the Israeli team would accept sovereignty if it was nudged this way from America.
On our past programs, I remember Jeremy once made the analogy of Benjamin Netanyahu to Saul, King Saul, from the tribe of Benjamin, and saying, well, there's a certain finger to the wind, listening to his people, a vacillation. And there's a prevalent theory in Israel that Bibi always goes and appoints leftist Ramatkal, the head of the army, and leftist people, so he can sort of blame them and outsource the pragmatic international leftist decisions that he's making and say it's about them and not alienate his further right-wing base. And I think that right now Bibi is looking at the table and he's saying, wait a second, now I can actually, why is he bringing in Caroline Glick now? Why didn't he bring her in before? Because he sees now is the time where he could actually use her, because that her ideological peers are on the other side too. So if that does happen, and I certainly hope it does, I don't think it's necessarily because of a foundational shift in Bibi. It's because of the ecosystem that we're in right now.
Yeah. To answer your question, I think that sovereignty in Judea and Samaria has never been closer. Meaning, I don't think that we need peace with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia needs Israel and America much more than we need Saudi Arabia. Yeah, and so the fact that we've put the Bible, or at least we should put the Bible front and center, and that really is the question of the next 4 weeks. Can Israel, can Caroline Glick, can all of the people around Trump and Netanyahu bring God a little bit more to the forefront? If this remains a topic about Trump in politics, instead of actually bringing God to the forefront, the Bible to the forefront, history of what is the true reality of what should be in the Middle East, I think that really is the key that will solve all of the problems.
Yeah, with your permission, I would like to sort of pivot a little bit, because I think Jeremy just touched on it right there. This is not a binary of left or right. We're going to lose either way. This needs to be a binary of God or no God. And I think that that's the conflict that's happening, that has been happening deep in the undercurrent and the foundational conflict within Israeli society. And that's something I wanted to share, because a lot of people don't hear this. They don't know this. They don't know what's really happening. And I just saw an interview of the outgoing deputy head of the Israeli army. And he was talking about one of the prospective new Ramatkals, Ofer Winter. And he said, not worthy. Could we play that clip?
Yeah.
Ofer Winter.
לא ראוי. כמח"ט גבעתי, הוציא פקודת יום שהיא שערוריה, שקרא לחטיבה שלו לצאת להילחם את מלחמות השם. צה"ל לא נלחם את מלחמות השם, צה"ל נלחם על הגנת אזרחי מדינת ישראל ועל ריבונותה.
בגלל זה הוא לא ראוי?
לא ראוי.
בגלל שהוא קורא...
אסור.
ואם הוא מבקש מהחיילים להגיד שמע ישראל לפני יציאה לקרב, זה כל כך נורא.
אני אומר בצורה ברורה וחד משמעית.
נו?
לא יכול להיות שמפקד בצה"ל קורא לחייליו להילחם את מלחמות השם.
אולי אתה במגדל השן ולא שם לב שישראל משתנה?
אני אומר לך,
שחלק גדול מהחיילים במלחמה, מה לעשות עם אנשים מאמינים?
מה זה קשור?
מה יקרה אם הם ילחמו? אם הם יגידו שמע ישראל לפני?
צה"ל הוא צבא מדינת ישראל, הוא צבא ממלכתי. יש בו דרוזים, יש בו בדואים, יש בו ערבים מוסלמים, יש בו ערבים נוצרים, יש בו חיילים מאמינים וחיילים לא מאמינים. לכן כשאני יוצא להילחם, אני יוצא להילחם על הבית, לא לעשות את מלחמות השם.
I think that the interviewer was 100% right. He nailed it. That this Yair Golan, that was the deputy head of the Israeli army, is part of the old guard. There is a deep spiritual, religious revolution that is happening. And what is a revolution, essentially? Going back to the very beginning. A revolution goes back to the beginning. We are returning to our spiritual roots as a people of faith in the land of Israel. And it is so fundamentally changing the country, where soldiers are ripping off all their old patches, and what are they putting on? the patch about what they're really fighting for, which is the temple, which is for Messiah, which is what it's really about. And that terrifies people like him. And that's the internal conflict that's really happening in the country. That's what it's really about. And
can I tell you, though, something that's really beautiful? That was talking about Ofer Winter, who was known as a very religious person that was speaking, in the name of the Torah, in the name of God. Netanyahu has now appointed a new chief of staff, and Ofer Winter has now been reinstated as a general in the army. So there is not just a change that's happening within the spirit of Israel, but fundamentally, we're actually changing the leadership now of the IDF, and that's exciting.
Right. I could go into biblical source after biblical source, but just, here's just one of them from Ezekiel chapter 36. For I'll take you from among the nations and gather you out of all the countries and bring you back to your own land. Then I will sprinkle clean water upon you, and you shall be clean. From all your filthiness and from your idols I will cleanse you, and I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you. I will remove the heart of stone from your flesh and give you a heart of flesh. And I will put my spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes, and you shall keep my judgments and do them. That is what is happening under the headlines on BBC. That is what's happening within the nation of Israel. And you see this also from people that the world would say, oh, it's a secular country. They're secular people. And they don't understand what's really in the heart of the Jews. I want to play this clip of one of the hostage girls, Sapir Cohen, explaining what her experience was.
Nice, you have bed bugs in all your body. It's very hard to breathe there. You don't have hair. You can see the sunlight. But, the fact that I believe in God, it doesn't say that I will get everything that I want. And it doesn't say that I will be happy all the time. But it's promised me just one thing, that behind everything that happened, there is purpose. And I just thought about that every time. If I need to be in the tunnels, I will be in the tunnels. And I will try to do the best that I can.
Do you hear that? That is what is called faith. Does she keep every intricate law of the Sabbath? I don't know. But that's not what we're talking about here. What does the book of Deuteronomy tell us? Then the Lord your God will bring you into the land which your fathers possessed, and you shall possess it. And the Lord your God will circumcise your heart and the heart of your descendants, to love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul, that you may live. That is what is happening.
Well, what's so beautiful about that is that quote, and then you mentioned Ezekiel, meaning Israel is going to come back to the land and go through a process. We're going to come back and we're going to need a new heart. We're going to need a new spirit, because the founders of Israel are not going to have a heart. They're not going to have the Spirit of God. And then this process that's happening, it's like cracked open our heart, but it's opened up our heart for
But also,
a new
like
way.
a fish in water, this holistic return to God on the deepest emotional, spiritual, psychological level can only happen within our land. The nation of Israel in the land of Israel brings forth this new heart, this new circumcised heart.
Well, I'll tell you what was so powerful for me, because I woke up this week and Tehillah made pancakes for the kids. We were just so excited with the news that we're going to relocate the Gazans and America will rebuild it into a Riviera. It was just such an exciting concept, because we were sort of like with our backs to the sea, and Egypt was running after us, just like this week's Torah portion. And there was nowhere to run. There was just no solution. There was no way out of this problem. We're stuck with the Hamas in Gaza. We're stuck with the Gazans in Gaza. What are we going to do? There is no way out. And then all of a sudden the sea split. And then there was no way, and now there is a way. This strengthened my faith so much, because when our own human eyes can't see a way, God has elected Donald Trump, took him down for 4 years, only to allow things to unfold at such a time and in such a place to make a revolution in the land of Israel and in the Middle East. And to me, we're literally watching something of biblical proportion, a splitting of the sea historically. This is no less than Cyrus's declaration of like, we are going to change things in the Middle East. And so, I don't know, maybe we see a beautiful new day.
And I think that what we just saw there with this girl, who is representative to me of what's happening in the hearts of the nation, is that whatever's happening, God is going to choose the true leader of Israel and raise him up. We're going to go through very soon this transition from Saul to David. We're on the precipice of that transition right now.
I think that's an amazing way to finish today's show. We could go on for hours and hours, and I think the headlines are literally happening as we speak. So, guys, you need to stay tuned to Israel. Also, if you want some more Torah with rabbis Jeremy Gimpel and Ari Abramovitz, you guys need to join the Land of Israel Fellowship at thelandofisrael.com. We'll put a link in the description below. And I do want to remind you guys, you got to get your tickets now for the Israel Summit, June 9th through 11th in Dallas, Texas, because they're 25% off right now, and they're not going to stay that way. If you want to meet all of us here and a whole lot more amazing speakers, Israelis, it's going to be an amazing, amazing event. We're super excited about it. Make sure you get your tickets for the Israel Summit. We'll also put a link for that in the description below. Guys, as always, stop listening to the lies and propaganda and connect with the truth of what's happening in Israel. We'll be back very soon here at the Land of Israel Network and the Israel Guys.